He's an electrical engineer and energy innovator with more than 2 decades of experience across Africa, Canada, and United States. A proud graduate of Pritani Military St. Louis, Senegal.
If I take Senegal and Africa in general, for me, there is no reason why solar is not dominating our power grid. There is no
Okay.
reason. I don't even take it's expensive. There is no reason. We could make it happen and we have to make it happen.
All right, welcome back to the Opportunity Room, the show where we sit down with true leaders, change makers, people who are turning ambition into actions. Today's guest is someone whose journey is very exceptional. I'm honored to sit down with Dr. Ibrahim Jai. He's an electrical engineer and energy innovator with more than 2 decades of experience across Africa, Canada, and United States. A proud graduate of Pritani Military St. Louis, Senegal, where he was the major of the class of 1989. Dr. Njai went to earn his PhD in high voltage engineering from the University of Quebec, Chicoutimi, where he also lectured for nearly a decade. Today, he leads a team of GE Vernova grade solution in New York, developing the next generation of power equipment for HVDC and DC grid application. He is recognized as thought leader in renewable energy grid modernization. Dr. Njai, welcome to the Opportunity Room.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, my brother, Mr. Amadou Legrand Hall. We used to call you Legrand. So I'm honored to be here and glad that we'll spend some time together.
Absolutely, man. This is an honor to have you here. I guess for people who have actually watched the very first episode, we have one of our classmates also, Umar Diane,
Great.
and now we're bringing you Mr. Ibrahim Jai, and looking forward to this
Of
conversation.
course.
So, without further ado, let's start with Pritani Militaire, of course, because I always brag about Pritani
Yeah.
Militaire and the type of people that came out of that school. So obviously you were the major of our class of 1989. For those of you who don't know, that means the top of the class when we did the exam to get into that school. So how did that experience shape your discipline in leadership and your drive for excellence?
Well, great question. Probably the same way it has shaped you also a little bit. So yes, I was probably the major entering, not the major exiting to be fully transferred, but great experience overall. So I didn't remember much of the. It was not about the learning, but it was about the journey in life, so to speak. I mean, as you know, we started in that school very very young. So if you kind of repeat the story somewhere else, people kind of realize that maybe it's a very difficult choice for families to let young kids at the 12 years old age to go live abroad for close to 7 years and exit and just continue. So but I think overall, if I look back, what made me very proud of being part of that school and that the history of that school is, first of all the requirement of what help you sustain in life, sustain in non-very familiar environment, being true to your purpose, and being true to your mission. Right after finishing the school, I could not realize all those acumen overall. But when I
Right.
went to live abroad, as you described in my bio, outside of Senegal first, and then later on in Canada. It's almost like all I was practicing at school, being, with, new family, new camaraderie, and, finding yourself where you still just came almost naturally. And the payoff comes with, you end up having it a little bit in an easier way that, some others who did not have that experience. Because myself, I did experience getting younger guys outside of Senegal for the first time. And then for some of them who has failed, pretty much failed because of that lack of experience in how you will sustain in life in general. So I would be always grateful for the Pritani military to give me that sort of education and background and training overall in life.
That's great. I think I was probably one of the guys that was least interested in school in the beginning when I joined. But when I look back, that experience allowed me when I decided to pivot and just take school seriously to just achieve what I wanted to achieve out of life. Because, like you mentioned, at 12 years old, that shapes you to become a true leader overall. Uh, so now, after you graduated from high school, you went to Morocco, right? Why did you choose Morocco? Because usually people, from Senegal, they go to either French. Just very little was going to the U.S. Why did you choose Morocco after graduating high school?
Well, good question again. So I honestly did not choose Morocco. I just choose to leave Senegal. That's what most of us they
Okay.
do, and probably
Right.
some of my dad mainly, but my parents in general give me some advice where to put. It's funny that you started with Pritani because as you remember, most of us, especially entering the school, the dream is always to continue and to become an officer in the army and so on.
Right.
Where the school
Right.
tested us, almost all of us, was sometimes you go lack of discipline, and then throughout your journey, you get back to maybe more rigors. So I was not very,
Right.
I would say, attracted by being a military, unlike
Right.
many of probably our classmates. But I do
Right.
remember that at the last year, like toward graduation, I did do the test to become in the Marine or something like that. And for some reason, that year the results never came out. Probably I will not maybe pass or not. But I had great hope out of that
Right.
exam. But when the result came late, I remember my dad advising me just to go to maybe the general office for grant and just put my file and so on. So one of the last grant that was available was for Morocco. So because for France and in
Okay.
Europe in general, you kind of try to look for admission maybe somewhere in the middle of the year. I was not necessarily there yet, but after around July when we finished the school, the only option that was available there for me to get out of Senegal was maybe that grant from Morocco, and I ended up getting it. So I didn't go to Morocco for that purpose. I do remember that I arrived very late in Morocco because the system in Morocco is very close to the system in Europe where, school in general, college start very early on, early September. So I did made it to my final destination in Morocco somewhere very late in October. Of course, we had to
Okay.
work very hard to be able to kind of follow and catch up what was missed. And this is again some of
Right.
the attribute that I just mentioned before about the Pritani. So it just gives you all the sort of a means to just sustain and then keep pushing, which is what I probably did because it ended up turning very well in Morocco. So that was a very nice experience. Overall, 5 years in Morocco, where I did actually started my college training around science and electrical engineering.
Okay. So you study electrical engineering in
Correct.
Morocco when you were
Yes, it
there.
was
Okay.
initially
All right.
what we call physical science, and
Okay.
then through the different steps. So I ended up being admitted in one of the school of engineering there. So I kind of know at that point that electrical engineering is something that I was very interested in. I was debating between chemical engineering and whatnot. So it tells you that I knew early on that I wanted to do engineering. And then, out of that 5 years in Morocco, I was ready to go to grad school, and that's what prompted me to be in Canada later on.
All right, great. So actually my sister-in-law is from Morocco. So I guess if she hear that next question that I have, she'd probably be mad at me. But I have to ask that question. So how difficult is Moroccan education system in comparison to Senegal in general?
Uh, Good question again, but I will not be able to answer it fairly because I did not experience higher education in Senegal, Brittany,
Okay, right,
and I just did not experience lower education in Morocco. So I could not necessarily compare apple to apple, right?
right,
But
right,
it's a very how would I say it? At least for my point of view, the Senegalese education system prepare you very well to succeed in Morocco. Meaning, it seems like we must be having, and probably credit to Britannia again, but overall, because we are following the same system, Britannia has been following the same system that the rest of the country. But it looks like the Senegalese, I would say, general course in high school, middle school is very, very strong and prepare you well. Because I did not find myself lost in Morocco. Outside of the school, the college itself, of course, life was life and tough in some part, but really being able
right.
to, follow class and succeed how it was needed. It was pretty seamless, and I think thanks to the background we got in Senegal. But overall, Morocco has a very, I would say, very, very respected school system, especially when it comes to higher education. I think
Okay,
more
okay,
very often compared to the rest of the African country, they understand the benefit of having many options in college, distributing college almost across the country. And in terms of engineering, I probably would put them probably in the number one seat in Africa. I don't know what is the rest, especially in the English side of Africa. South Africa, as a emerging country, must have something very solid, probably sure. But the country
Right.
I know and I meet people from, regardless. When you talk about Morocco, the higher education system there, it's a very competitive one.
Okay, great. Because the reason why I thought about asking that question, because I see that a lot of medical school students come to Senegal. They leave Morocco to come to Senegal to become to study to become a doctor, right? So since I seen that wave of people always coming to Senegal, and Gabon also have a lot of people coming to Senegal to study. That's why I was
Yeah,
curious to
and maybe
find
to
out, what.
clarify on that, I think you spotted very well, but I think this is the particular reason. Senegal, for some reason, or maybe we know the reason, but Senegal and Morocco, they do have a very, very good relationship that dated back a couple of
That's true.
centuries. So that
Right.
partnership happened naturally between Morocco and Senegal. It doesn't mean a lack of maybe great medical school in Morocco, vice versa. I think the exchange
Right.
has been established that way probably since the foundation of those countries, just to make sure that we continue to have collaboration. But the number of Senegalese students even now that go to Morocco in multiple disciplines outweigh the number that comes just for medical school. It is also true for Tunisia, other northern country, because it is also
Right.
true that the Senegalese medical school, especially the one at the University of Cheikh Anta Diop or University of Cheikh Anta Diop,
Right.
is a very well recognized one. It's a very, even to the
Right.
day to this day, it is probably one of the pride of University Cheikh Anta Diop because it has been well
Right.
maintained by great medical professors, etc. So it's understandable that Moroccans sometimes they want to come and experience that. But in the other side, the number of Senegalese that go for all the disciplines, I mentioned engineering. Of course, we have exchange around medical students as well, students in economics. I do remember having, to live with Senegalese who came to Morocco to study law, believe it or not, right? Even if you do have a different law system. But the Moroccan higher education system overall is an excellent one, I should say that.
Very good. So now let's talk about a little bit your journey from Morocco to Canada. Can you tell us a little bit more? Obviously after you went and studied electrical engineering in Morocco, your next step was Canada, and why was Canada picked to
Yeah.
continue your education?
Again, here it's almost so Canada. Probably I should say I did choose Canada, but I did not choose Canada
Okay.
out of understanding why.
Okay.
Canada was just attractive because, as you were just alluding at the beginning, so when you were from Senegal or the francophone countries in Africa, France is the natural
Right.
connection. Especially when
Right.
it comes to research and graduate stuff. I did have option, to be honest. I did have a grant to continue to do a master and probably following by PhD in France, and I did have the same for Canada. How did the connection came is I was looking to do something related to power transmission. And I did have a relative in Chicoutimi, like one of my uncle who was professor at that college, who told me at the time, hey, there is just a new lab that has been opened in University of Quebec in Chicoutimi, which is a relatively small university. But as you know, the university,
Right.
they get strong depending on the field. So in the field of high voltage engineering, which ended up being what I did for PhD, Chicoutimi had a
Right.
very, I would say, good spot across Quebec and probably even across Canada because it was founded. I mean, the founding of that lab was from Hydro Quebec, which is known to be a very prominent utility grid. Anyway, my uncle told me, "Hey, how about you send me your, transcript and so on, and I will talk to, the lab manager here and see what he thinks, the professor." And it turns out to be well. So he did end up accepting me as a grad study. So because out of Morocco, I should say, I was performing well at school. I have been always a little bit serious about school, especially the moment I know that I wanted to do grad stuff. So
Right.
it is not like I was surprised by being accepted, but I thought, well, if it come before I'm ready to go to France, then I will choose Canada, and it is what happened. So I went to Canada, not necessarily. knowing that Canada will be better, how it will translate. But I had the opportunity to work on high voltage engineering, which was the
Okay.
type of, or the, if you will, the specialization or the deeper domain in electrical engineering that I did want to pursue. Because in the back of my mind, it was, when you go back to Senegal, what do you want to do with your degree? And again,
Right.
our national electric company is where most of the electrical engineer would want to probably grow. So, and I say, well, if I do something related to power engineering, high voltage, then I will have a spot in Senelec, and that's where I went. And of course, the story ended up being something completely different. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so great. So I've noticed in our conversation that you mentioned a couple of times being having grants to go to school. Is it something that you have the connection on making happen these grants, or is it just because of the result of how well you were doing in school that you ended up naturally having those grants?
I think both, but results for sure. The reason is both is most of the grant, and this is something probably the school system in Senegal have to do. Most of the grant in Senegal are not necessarily published and so on. You know, you
Okay.
have somebody to tell you, hey, there is something going on, etc. Right? So, for instance, in Morocco, as I told you, when I finished, and I did not have the top grade when I finished Pritani, but I did well because I did the maths branch at the high school. I have overall acceptable results. So when I went to Morocco, I did not go to grade school from the get go. I just went to college in Morocco, but I did perform very well in for the record, I finished the major of my class at the college in Morocco.
Okay.
That's get me the
Okay.
grant to be at one of the top engineering school in Morocco, which I did not end
Right.
up actually finishing because I did choose to go to Canada. So
Right.
again, the connection in Chicoutimi is my uncle, but the professor, owning the lab probably picked me out of my grant as well, out of my
Right.
results. So it's more like a yes
Okay.
connection to let you know because if you miss the opportunity that hey this was an opportunity why will I not send my file then it will never happen but it ended up happening because you have the results or the grade that justify why you have been selected. So I did end up having also solid grant while I was in Canada because in Canada it's always competitive. So when you go and you apply, you want to renew your grant, it's all based on your grade. So I was getting
Right.
constantly my grant renewal. For instance, my scholarship, my tuition fees to be waived because of good school, good results, and sometimes excellency grants. Overall, I think I was kind of fortunate to still maintain good grade at school
Right.
because I
Right.
knew I think that's what helped me a little bit. I knew how it can make your life a little bit easier when you have enough financial support. And I was at least there
Right.
to be able to do my own thing by just having good grades.
All right. Great. So you did your masters in Canada, right? Is
Yep.
that correct? Okay. So then after that, you decided to pursue a
Exactly,
PhD, right?
from the same professor, and again back to your question in general, professor, as you know, they would continue the student that they like or the student that they think is are performing well and could generate
Okay.
some good results. So I did my master, and then 2 years later he admitted me to continue to do my PhD, which I accepted. So I ended up spending 6 years in that lab, actually even seven, because after my PhD, there is something we typically call sort of like a postdoc, meaning you are there waiting maybe for some big opportunity, and then you continue to work with that professor, not as a student, almost like a assistant in the lab, and then making sure that some you can make some publication happen. So I end up having 7 full years at University of Quebec in Chicoutimi, and it was a very very good experience. Probably the very first time that I realized I'm an adult now. Yes.
And why is
Well,
that?
because I mean, you said it yourself in the bio. So you go to Canada, okay? Well, you need to find your own means. You have a grant, yes, but the grant
Right.
is not enough to
Right.
help you, sustain the life you want. So I started,
Right. Right.
being a lecturer at the college, especially when I started my PhD. Technically, it means this is your very first job. You know?
Right.
Lecturer is especially if you haven't done that ever, so it's a very serious thing because you have to prepare a class and you're in front of like a class of 15, 30, 60, depending on the topic you are teaching, and you have a very strong
Right.
responsibility because you are evaluated by the student at the end, and then Of course, the college or the faculty where you are, if they don't like your performance, you don't get to teach the next semester. So I almost continuously taught for about 9 years while I was there, and because of that, and
Right.
doing working or as a lecturer and doing your PhD at the same time force you to just focus. So I say that's where I
Right. Right.
realize I'm an adult now because I quickly felt the responsibility. All my other type of
Right. Right.
studies and beforehand was just you go to class, you pass your exam, you have good grade, then you go for vacation, and then you come back. This was different.
Right.
This was more like you know. And I remember it created a couple of clashes with my advisor from time to time because sometimes he felt I was putting more attention to preparing my class and not advancing my research. But again, I was also
Okay.
family support, so I needed to find resource to help out my family, my
Absolutely.
mom, because along the way
Right.
my dad passed away relatively
Very
at a
true.
young
Right.
age, meaning probably in my first year in Morocco, before the second year, my dad passed away. So we were all having also to find a way to support mom and the younger brother. So I'm the second in my
Right.
in my in my family. I have five siblings, so I felt a lot of
Right.
responsibility. So I was doing that to earn money and then be able to support my sibling as well. So it was a sense of responsibility when I started grad study, PhD mainly.
Absolutely. Sorry to hear
No, no,
about your
that's
dad, man.
it's too old now. A couple of decades yet. So
Right. So now tell me a little bit about that PhD journey, right? Because I contemplate doing a PhD. I'm not sure if it's worth it at this age, but I'm contemplating doing a PhD maybe in cybersecurity, AI, or maybe big data. I'm still thinking. I'm not 100% sure, right? So tell me about that PhD journey. How does it work? Do they just give you a topic to work on throughout the PhD journey, or how does it work?
yes, short answer before you ask me again the question. It is always worth it. I would recommend you
Okay.
highly, and I'm so proud to hear that you are still open to keep learning. It is never too late, and of course, it is never a waste of time. Sometimes you hear that, like, why would you do a PhD? Like it's a waste of time. Yes, but it is not. But yes, they will give you a topic, and back to my comment about being also adult is, doing a PhD is almost like not studying, to be honest. Like the reality of a PhD is you kind of study yourself, and at some point in that journey, 2 years later or 4 years later, you
Right.
have to defend what you have found, right? So it's a
Okay.
very I would say complementary type of study with anything else that you want to do in life, because it doesn't require to
Okay.
be really full time. Yes, you will be doing full time because you will be doing your research, but it's not like full time like a sort of a 9 to 5 type of a job or anything like that. You almost like have typically 3 to 4 years to submit a PhD thesis. And of course, everything that is take for you to have a decent PhD thesis, because a PhD thesis needs to meet certain standard. You have to work on something
Right.
new. You have to bring new concept,
Right.
new ideas, and then validate them, right? And then it will be
Right.
reviewed by typically your peers, like but professors. Ultimately, you end up calling them your peers, but professors who have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge in the same field, and themselves they
Right.
need to be convinced that this is new, this is advancing the knowledge, advancing the art, like so
Okay.
that's why you can almost do it every time, but you also can choose what you want to work on. What is to you
Right.
worth spending effort because you have the passion and you have the fundamental knowledge to
Right.
advance that. So in my case, I was
Right.
doing of course, I started with my master, and a master is almost like a sort of a initiation to research. So you are still
Right.
being guided highly by, professors like advisor and so on. They tell you how to carry out results, how to validate, how to find papers, how to write papers. It's almost like a beginning of that. But from the topic that you are being almost trained as a coming researcher, you will start to identify an area that you feel needs more knowledge, more advancements, because there are more questions and
Okay.
so on, right? And
Okay.
you start to feel the affinity with that almost quickly, and you say, "This is what I want to pursue." If you really want to do PhD, because I
Right.
also do
Right.
recognize that it's not necessarily for everybody. It requires a certain
Right.
patience, certain level of curiosity, certain
Right.
level of wanted to challenge theory, because there is nothing
Right.
as really practical. Even in engineering, there is nothing as practical as PhD. In engineering, the only difference is like you have a chance to validate some of the theory in the lab. But in
Okay.
other topic, in computer science, cybersecurity can be even close to that. But in other topic, you can think about social science or finance, economics. It's very hard to validate, to test some of those concepts, right?
Right.
But overall,
Right.
it has to be very theoretical and you have to have the passion for that field to advance the knowledge, and you have to
Right.
have the, if you will, the strength or the, maybe strength is a good word, but to be able to be challenged as well. Because it's not like
Right.
a kind of class report. It's not like a, internship sort of a report. It's something very dense
Right.
that other people as knowledgeable or even more knowledgeable than you will challenge. So you have to accept
Okay.
to kind of raise a little bit the bar, so then when those challenges come, you will be able to defend yourself. That's what end up
Right.
granting you the doctorate or being to a level of a PhD, because you ultimately have to demonstrate that you can carry enough novelty in a research field and be able to be convincing in your peer. And from that point of view, and you were able to carry on your own research and become a faculty or do R&D, whatever. But I did not regret doing a PhD, if I want to make it short.
All right. Good. Now, let me ask you, do you necessarily have to create a new way of doing things, or can you just, for instance, someone has done something in the past and you challenge that thought process and just come up with your PhD thesis is around that thought process that someone already initiated a while ago, but you did not agree with that process, and you just come up with a
You are
new way of doing
100%
it.
right. You are 100% correct. I think it is mistakenly taken. Myself, I even said it. Like the level of novelty is actually a small area. So you are absolutely correct. So what you have to bring on the table is a new way of finding things. That's what is, for instance, you can take an example. I will come and say, this is this concept, this is how it works, this is what explain it, just as an example.
Right.
And this is just one way of thinking it. You can do a PhD in looking in another way of thinking it.
Right.
Nothing is new, but you have brought a new approach and you defended that new approach
Right.
well, right? But sometimes it's completely out of the field. For instance, imagine somebody who will work on a medical case like related to, for instance, cancer, and just find a completely new cells or completely new type of bacteria of disease or whatnot, right? All those things are completely
Right.
new, but there will be a couple of
Right.
other theses around that same novelty, because it's not just because Ahmed said it that it is true. Somebody needs to find another angle, another variant, another.
Right.
And that's what makes actually research very slow, but that is what
Right.
makes advancement of knowledge. For the
Right.
general understanding, PhD or this level of research is just advancement of knowledge. Nobody should think that you will do a PhD and finding something new that you go and patent and then start to make money out of it. If I tell you what
Right.
was my PhD topic, you will laugh. Had nothing to do with what I'm doing now. Absolutely not. Well,
Okay.
it has the electrical engineering in general, but just to
Right.
say it out loud, I was trying to understand the impact of icing on high voltage equipment. For instance, in Quebec, in the
Okay.
northern of pays, those countries, like most of the time it is snowing,
Right.
there is winter, and ice cover
Absolutely.
those high voltage equipment that are outdoor, like those substation. How the ice
Right.
degrade their performance is what I was trying to study. Right
Okay.
now, right now, probably since I left that lab, nobody really asked me what is the impact on ice on anything like that, right?
Right. Right.
But, again, fundamentally, a PhD gives you a way of carrying research, like the approach. It kind of teach you in a more independent way as compared to a master. How do you carry research and broad convincing argument on the table?
Right. That's good. That's good. Good to know for all those people listening. I guess that was a breakdown. If you have the ambition of actually doing a PhD or pursuing
Yes, you must
PhD
love
in
theory a
person.
little bit. You must love starting from a very wrong statement and try to prove that statement right or wrong. Essentially the
Right.
case
Right.
of a PhD.
Great. Now let me ask a question before you're a lecturer for like 9 years.
Yeah.
So when you're a lecturer, don't you lose your technical skills?
No, you actually strengthen it. I mean, in my case, I actually strengthened my technical
Okay.
skills because, yes, most of the class I was teaching, well, they went across from bachelor all the way to PhD. I had the chance to teach
Okay.
some grad classes as well. The grad classes are
Okay.
not that difficult. At least to me, it was not that difficult because you were kind of teaching topic that you were studying yourself, at least the user cases that you were bringing in class and so on, right? But
Right.
the undergrad classes, you have, and I'm calling them kids not to be negative, but you have those kind of kids coming from no idea of what you are talking about, and they tell you
Right.
what you're saying doesn't make sense. And it is to you to kind
Okay.
of prove them that's actually how the power system work, how the grid work,
Right.
and to prove it with
Right.
equation, etc. So it's kind of very technical, and that's where you find
Okay.
most of the challenge. It's almost like the saying that says, if you want to understand something, teach it, right?
Right.
Because I
Okay.
was teaching it, I
Right.
get to understand it even better because I had to break it down
Right.
to a level that somebody who's just out of high school can process it and
Right.
gradually become better at, right? But yes, that was a
Great.
very, very, in addition to giving me, what I would call my first job, but that was a very, very great experience for me because yeah, I mentioned about how it brings you to be more technical, to read books, to, prepare tests and, evaluate those tests. It's all technical work, but it,
Right.
train you on communication skills, on, presentation and so on. Because think about it,
Absolutely.
when at college, when you teach for a semester, it's roughly 15 classes throughout the semester, like 15 weeks, every
Right.
week, 3 hours of presentation and discussion and so on, right?
Right.
You don't become an expert in communication. Those are skills that some of them you have naturally or not, but it helps you being
Right.
able to expose and discuss and answer questions in a more professional way. So I also value that experience very, very, very much.
So in I don't know, is Chicoutimi in Quebec
Yes,
or is it
it
is it
is in
okay, it's in
Quebec,
Quebec.
northern of Quebec, 5 hours north of Montreal.
Okay,
So yeah,
okay. All right,
very
good.
cold is if it
So
is
you
what you're thinking.
I can imagine. No, I was thinking I was trying to figure out whether you were doing your lecture in English or in French. That's why I was
That's a good
asking. So
question. Most likely in French because I say most likely, not 100%, because in the PhD, in the grad study level, especially PhD, you hire, I mean, professors tend to hire the best students, and the best students
okay,
can be from everywhere. And everywhere means
okay,
if they come with a language that is not French, English is where everybody agrees. So I, even at the time, so you might think that, now my English is probably acceptable. 15 years ago, that's probably where I started to teach at the PhD level. 15 years ago, I
okay,
did not have that decent English, but I had to
right,
lecture in English because it was a class of 4 5. It was,
okay,
two from Asia, two from, one from, northern of Europe, and you cannot force
okay,
students in grad study to kind of learn French or do French before they do anything because they end up wasting
okay.
6 months or 1 year of their life while they could do research.
Absolutely.
And quite frankly, in our world of engineering, it happened in English most likely because the paper we read, the books we read, most of them are actually in English because you have to find one common language that makes everybody agree, right? So yes, yeah, I
Absolutely.
had to do it even if it was Quebec sometime. But undergrad, it was 100% in French.
All right. So you spent like a decade in GE research before moving into GE Vernova. What is GE Vernova then?
That's a good question. So maybe for your audience, so GE about 4 years ago, GE, which is a very old company of almost 135 years, decided to break into three independent entities. Like one entity was the healthcare side, the other one was the aerospace side, and the other one was the power side. So GE Vernova is that legacy branch of GE that is 100% now focusing on power. Of course, it has to
Okay.
rebrand itself. The name GE here sustained the legacy. But the old GE we knew continue as GE Aerospace. Their new name is GE Aerospace, but legally they stay as GE. It's almost like they have divested the healthcare branch and the power branch, and GE Vernova is the power branch.
Great, great, great. Thank you for breaking that down. I was a little
Of
confused. I
course, yeah,
didn't do
I
my
know.
research
Even
on that
for us,
before the
sometimes
call.
we sometimes get confused.
Right. So now, I think you mentioned earlier when you were studying electrical engineering, you had in mind maybe some days you'd probably go back to Senegal and give back by working to Senelec and all of those organizations. So are you still having that in mind, or you're not sure now about just going back, or you
Well,
still
I'm not sure, but at the same time, it feels almost like I don't want to say it's too late because it's never late, especially in the sense of giving
okay?
back. But
Right.
when you were still relatively young, when I finished my PhD, I was like about 30. I did not actually have plan to stay anywhere, because when I
Okay.
left Senegal, I did not leave with the plan of immigrating outside. I was too young. I left
Right.
when I was nine
Right.
years old. So it's almost like,
Right.
yeah, I will come back. Why not? So I wanted to study what I studied because it was just to come back and do something in Senegal. But then when I
Right.
finish, of course, I say, well, how suitable it will be if you just could have maybe some experience before you return, right? And that experience in Canada, I thought was very valuable because, as we all know, it's a very developed country, part of the G7. So in terms
Right.
of technology and so on, there is a lot to learn in Canada. But more importantly, Hydro-Quebec in the world of power grid and so on has been, was almost in the forefront of maybe developing technology related to, high voltage or power grid, essentially, right? Because of the tough
Right.
environment, tough challenge, very large network, etc.
Right.
But anyway, I choose to
Right.
stay in Quebec for a couple of years before I make any decision. And the more I go, the more I start to like it because, yes, it's true. From Senegal, I always wanted to come back. But, as a, being an engineer is like, where can I, do the most interesting challenge? At some point, I even forgot about it, going back to Senegal. So I was just doing it and doing it and doing it.
Right.
And later on, the G opportunity came, and I say, oh, well, how about I just go and maybe grab an experience in the US and then I will see. At the time, my plan was maybe you go back to Canada and then you come back to Senegal. But I started to put,
Right.
going back a little bit far away, and then life happened in between, getting married, having kids, etc. And then you start to say, you know what, let's see next year. So at this point, to be honest, I don't have any plan to go back. The other aspect also, which sometimes because I get asked this question often, or sometimes when I meet some, fellow Senegalese elsewhere, do you plan to come back? It's always a little bit presumptuous to kind of think that people who are outside, they have to bring back. The
Right.
point is the people who are outside, regardless of what they do, they are relatively nobody. When I say they are relatively nobody, it's not like they are better than the people that are in Senegal. They're just good in what they are
Absolutely.
doing. So the people in
Right.
Senegal or in Africa are not waiting for the people who are outside to come and tell them what to do, right? So
Right.
overall, everybody is doing their fair share. In my work today, if I find an opportunity for Senegal, I try to make connection, try to share information. I travel sometime to conferences. I meet people from Senegal sometime. We discuss about technical, make connection, and then whoever wants to pick up, pick up. But I don't give myself the mandate to go back to help Senegal or to give back to Senegal. Like
Right.
I'm just like one out of the population. You know what I mean?
I like that. I like that. I like that. So, what excites you most about the future of renewable energy and grid modernizations?
Well, I believe in it, and I'm not crafting my message. It's not because I work in GE Vernova. I believe in it for two reasons. One
Okay.
is, yes, putting renewable in the grid is hard, but there are places where it is easier to do than others. If I take Senegal and Africa in general, for me, there is no reason why solar is not dominating our power grid. There is no reason. I don't even think it's expensive. There is no reason. We could make it happen and we have to make it happen. It's just
Right.
like I would call it a God given natural resource because we have
Right.
plenty of it. The industry has demonstrated how solar is viable, even at the technical level. Forget about how much it costs. It is viable, meaning you can live with solar. We have places like Hawaii, places like Australia, who kind of live many days across with the energy produced from solar. So I'm a 100% believer in renewable in general, and solar will be my first candidate. Of course, the second is wind. We know how can make the differentiation. Yes, people they sometimes hate the wind turbine, etc. That part we can cover. But ultimately, renewable makes a lot of sense because of just the name. It is infinite. It doesn't end.
Right.
So there is no equation. You remember, every other decade there is this whole discussion about the peak in oil, right? At some point we'll be starting to hit the peak, and then the resource will not be able to. In renewable, those discussions never take place. So I think the industry, the society in general, we are dragging our feet just because we love the financial metric. And every time that you put something on the table, people say, "Oh, compare how much is cost." It's fair because it's a world of economy, and it needs to be a capitalistic world. I get that. But there are places like in Africa where the scarcity of energy is what is holding
Right.
Africa to propel. And we have that infinite resource that can change the game for us, truly can change the game for us. Because
Right.
in northern country, which are the most developed now, I mean, there are some others coming in. Energy is essentially used for heating or cooling. That's where we spend in the northern country almost 50% of the energy consumption, either heating
Okay.
or cooling.
Okay.
In Africa, we don't have that challenge. In Africa, we can have energy just for the function of moving stuff or conditioning stuff, like manufacturing per se, right?
Right.
So it's not like we have the same level of stress then, right? Life outside of just like the normal life, eating and so on, life is not that hard. Like there is probably the
Right.
reason why it was the birthplace of humanity. It's a very, I would say, accommodating climate overall. And then you have
Right.
this plenty resource that is the sun that is shining 360 days almost nonstop, except a few cloudy days here and there. But overall, why would not make it happen? So to your questions, I believe in renewable energy. For renewable energy, though, to happen in a reliable way, because no matter what, the power grid needs to be reliable. That is one of the very
Okay.
first attribute of the power grid. Then you remember in Senegal when the electricity was not very reliable and intermittent, how much damage it did, right?
Absolutely.
So the challenge for renewable is how to make it reliable for the grid because most of the renewable, except nuclear, and we can debate that, or I mean, anyway, are intermittent. So we have to find a way to make it intermittent. People in the field they know that storage, like battery storage, can solve that, but it is still expensive and so on. But I think the game in Senegal is how to push in Senegal and Africa is how to push at the very maximum renewable energy resource. Because as soon as energy starts to become plenty, it naturally goes cheaper.
Right.
It's like the
Absolutely.
law of demand and offer kind of. And
Right.
as soon as
Absolutely.
energy starts to get cheaper, it starts to accommodate, movement of industrialization and so on. Because in all the industry in general, the cost of energy is one of the highest burden. So if you can offset the
Right.
cost of energy because of cheap energy, then manufacturing and the cost of goods become much cheaper. And that's how I feel Africa will propel. There are some other trouble we can solve separately, but on the energy piece, I am dead convinced that the path forward should be about biorenewable.
Right. Great. So now, in your experience, right, if someone younger, like a younger version of yourself, or someone just that you coaching or mentoring, wanted to innovate in that space, what area would you ask them to innovate?
That's a very good question. What also I do know with my relatively short, limited experience, innovation in general happen by accident. You cannot prescribe
Okay.
innovation, right? That's
Okay.
that's what I learned. So you cannot come and say, "What do I renovate in renewable?" and just find it. It very rarely it happened that way. So
Okay.
to me, though, to put yourself in the right setup for innovation, you have to be in that field. You have to be working and there are small stuff to
Okay.
fix anyway to get you busy with it. For instance,
Right.
today, everybody can recognize that we don't have enough penetration of renewable in Africa in general. How do I make sure that
Right.
renewable grow in Africa? What type of renewable are
Right.
more justified there, right? I mentioned about wind, solar, and so on, but there are other type. Like for instance, we have
Right.
been talking about the different type of hydrogen that are on ground. We are talking about geothermal and so on. So there are a lot of aspects that any young, new, upcoming engineer can get busy in, and through that effort, through that working about it almost every day, sometimes you find breakthrough. And the breakthrough can be like a
Right.
new material or a new algorithm to do stuff, etc., etc. So it has to happen that way. So to simplify my message is let's just get busy in making sure that renewable is everywhere. My dream is to see, for instance, solar panels on every roof in Senegal. That's my dream. I sometimes I say people we should be driving electric vehicle in Africa. People say like, you lost your mind. Like really?
Why
My answer
not?
is no. I'm not losing my mind because the moment you make energy abundant, putting it in a
Right.
vehicle and driving become much cheap. You just have to buy the technology
Be-
and then you can justify the cost in about a decade or so, right? Yes, because of the lack of
Right.
infrastructure and everything, everybody says like, are you out of your mind? The reality is the
Right.
moment we start to work on it, we'll get all busy, smarter, and from there innovation will happen how to make things. I mean, I remind to everybody that the actual trend that is running in Senegal, like what we call the TR, is half electric. The BRT is half electric. All these buses that we
Right.
are driving in Africa could be actually electric buses. Why not, right? There are ways to make this entering in this thing. How much energy people are consuming for household, for the offices, public offices everywhere. I see pathway to put renewable energy resource everywhere. And the more we get busy about it, the more we'll find way to innovate.
I absolutely agree. I don't know if you knew because I went to Senegal for 1 year just to kind of for many for personal and business reasons. So I work in that project, the CTR, the train station that's
Hmm.
hybrid. I work on that project for like 9 months before I decided to come back to the US. And when I saw it, I've started dreaming in the direction that Africa should go. But if you have bold leaders that actually believe in changing the whole paradigm, just to kind of piggyback on what you
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
saying.
And then I think you
Uh,
hit a very interesting point as well. One of the area that I thought, in addition to making energy more, I mean, sustainable and so on, public transportation is another area that I think in Africa we should be piggybacking very quickly and so on. You take Senegal, for instance. We should see the train going everywhere. Like this exception of
Absolutely.
having one train doing like 40 miles and we are all happy and excited about it. Like, where is our ambition? We should be
That's not
exactly.
acceptable.
The bus transit. We are doing some effort now. I start to see like things like Dakar Remdik is going everywhere. This is good, but we should
Right.
not be. You're talking about my journey in Morocco. I remember it was
Right.
one of the. I mean, most of the Senegalese people they were amazed by that because when we were in Morocco, I was in Morocco. I mean, my first year was 1986. No,
Right.
1996. Sorry. Even
1996.
at that
Right.
time, they have a very strong, amazing public transportation company with very nice buses that can send you in every corner in Morocco. And we Senegalese
Right.
was like saying, this country is ahead of us. And this is almost 30 years ago. So in Senegal, we should not be
Right.
contemplating those things we could actually do and check, put aside and just focus on the hardest thing. The simplest thing, let's do
Right.
it now, no delay, right? Public transportation
Right.
is something that people in Senegal, in Africa in general, should be busy with because as soon as the movement happens, it's a strong
Right.
driver for economic. I mean, this country we are
Absolutely.
living in, that's what make it great. Like the moment they kind of break the
Right.
country and put highways and put people start to go from east to west, north to south, that's where the economic opportunities start to happen. You have to let people moving. Moving in Senegal is a very, very hard thing. People they don't have
Yeah, it is actually privilege right now to
exactly,
move about in
exactly.
Senegal. It shouldn't
It
be a
should not be a
privilege, right?
privilege.
So
Seriously, I mean, think about
yeah.
somebody leaving Saint Louis and wanted to go to Kédougou. In Senegal today, you
Right.
cannot do that in one day. And this is
Right.
less than probably 800 kilometers. What everybody will do, I mean, this country, they have airplanes, so they can, but everywhere in the rest of the world, those kind of travel, in Senegal, leaving Saint Louis to Kédougou is probably a 2-day journey. Why? Within
Yes.
one single country, almost like less than 500 miles apart. Why you cannot break it within like a day or even less than 10 hours? So I think we need to get those kind of things. And the reason why public transportation will help is not many people have the mean to travel comfortably and in the decent way to do that. That's what public transportation is for. You have train going
Right.
everywhere. Now that people
Right.
can have affordable ticket to travel and it's consistent. It's go. I mean, I remember. You remember when we were going to Pritani, how proud we were to hump in the train and then like leave Dakar at 6 and by 3 p.m. 6 p.m. you're back in San. But it was so, but it was a train system and we loved it, right? Those are the things
Right.
that needs to
Absolutely.
happen for everybody
It
in
should it should be
Senegal.
like that across all Senegal altogether.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
when you think about it,
Highways,
like the south
then
of
yeah.
Senegal, right? Excuse me.
Exactly, right?
The south of Senegal is very rich, right?
It
Yeah, you
is.
talk about
Yeah, but
Casamance,
even the west
Kolda,
side now.
they are
Yeah,
super rich in minerals.
exactly. Even the west side now, all the river the river bed, like the Senegalese river leaving Saint Louis going all the way to the south. But their area like Matam, Bakel, and so on. That's where the industrial agriculture will happen in Senegal. Those are the only places that have enough land for mass agriculture, right? So, and
Right.
for us to
Right.
avoid people to be all the time dumping themselves in Dakar because that's where the economic resources are. If you enable
Right.
easy transportation, easy mobility, people will live where they are
Right.
because they know they can get anywhere anytime that they want. The only reason why people
Absolutely.
move to one single place because that's where everything is. But if mobility becomes easy, people will put the stuff, industrialization will happen somewhere because I mean now people start to live in chaos and come work in Dakar and going back and forth. But
Absolutely.
tomorrow people should be living
Absolutely.
easily, safely, and coming to Dakar and going back. It should not be more than like
I
a
agree
2 hour
100%.
drive in a nice highway. You leave Albany, go
Absolutely.
to New York City, round trip in a day, you don't even count it as a travel. In Senegal, leaving Saint Louis to
That's
Dakar,
true.
you count it as a travel. I mean, why? Right?
Absolutely.
That yeah, there are some low hanging fruit to focus and to have a very strong economic impact on that before we dig into some of the more complicated stuff that start to here in Senegal. But it's all good. If somebody can make the difference somewhere, yes. But for me, the equation is simple. Let's start with the fundamentals. We need energy, we need mobility.
Right,
Let's do that first and
right.
then see what else will come.
100% agree. So now, when you reflect on your career, like from Senegal all the way to the US, via Canada and all of that. If someone wants to actually pursue a career, like someone listening to this podcast, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, well, another excellent question. And again, I don't put myself in a category where I can be giving people advice yet, but I will definitely suggest that, especially if you want to follow a technical path, meaning being like highly educated and so on, it's a no-brainer. You have to take school seriously. I don't think random knowledge happen. I don't believe in that. Like street knowledge, yes, it's a very well experience in life, but
Right,
you know, I used to say these days, much easier than our time, and we are not that old. Learning something is not difficult today. Today you have
right,
access, like internet is here, Google answer all your question. Book is no
right,
longer a thing expensive. I mean, we used to have books that would probably cost you maybe 15,000 in Senegalese currency, etc. Like many people could not afford having good stuff. Now there is no excuse, right? The
right,
only excuse maybe is some hardship in life, like, for instance, if you cannot necessarily sustain when you live in hunger or violence in homes. But those are something that will be fixed by other part. But my message will be, let's take education very seriously. That's to me job number one. The job number two and is honestly just believing in your capacity, right? I don't
right,
necessarily believe that everybody needs to be, a PhD or everybody needs to be like it must
right,
have a kind of recalibration in Senegal for people to understand that the merit or the reward in a job is just being a professional proficient somewhere. I mean, you and I know
right.
here, garages in the US, would you look down a garages in the US like a mechanic? Absolutely no,
Absolutely
right?
not.
Somebody working in a market or working in a restaurant, will you ever look down to those people? Absolutely no. Because what you see is work.
Right,
You see people sweating, going
right,
to work. We have to have that respect. So if people feel that their talent is in doing this, which is not like a office kind of job, so be it.
right.
But believe in it and do it seriously, right? My
Absolutely.
recommendation for any younger folks is, go to school, respect the
Right,
school, get a degree. It doesn't need to be a PhD, but get a degree. Like be proficient on something and get to work and work
right,
seriously, work hard. It pays off all the time, right? The hard work, and I'm not saying like I'm not trying to raise my hands. I always hard work. No, but I also, even where I fail, I always know that hard work will have paid off, right? It's always the answer.
absolutely.
But younger, go to school and respect school. All this kind of nice stuff that sometimes you hear around, like being an influencer here and there, or like thinking that things will happen magically. No, you can do all those things by having a degree. Knowledge is very respectable.
Yeah,
Knowledge gets you
absolutely.
understanding the challenges in life and hopefully be able to, most of the time, not always, of course, but most of the time, able to solve them or go by. Yeah, that would be my message to people, honestly, to you folks.
Great.
School, hard work, and get a degree. Please, let's get a degree.
Absolutely. Now everybody is paralyzed by AI and the rise of AI. So can you tell me, if has AI impacted your work in any shape or forms? If yes,
It
how?
started even faster than what I thought. The very first way
Okay.
that, I mean, my work to a little bit break it down for the audience, I'm still in the research world, but like industrial research has almost nothing to do with research because the research is very dedicated to, improving something you have in hand, like a product, a system or whatnot, right? Most of the time, what to improve is not easy to get. So we are almost using AI these days to tell us where to focus, which is very,
Okay.
very, very powerful. And AI is not at the maturity level yet. Like for now, it's more
Right.
like a buzzword than anything else. Most of the
Right.
places where you see AI is like Google, ChatGPT, etc. But AI is
Right.
10,000 times more powerful. And I don't want to get into the moral debate of AI, but many of the visionary kind of sees AI as a game changer, and rightfully so.
Right.
Because
Right.
if you if you if you start at least to understand the power behind AI, You can almost
Right.
imagining situation where AI will replace you and probably do
Right.
even a better job. Right.
Right.
So as a for instance researcher, I try to find some new ideas and maybe solve some existing problem, right? But
Right.
somebody can write a prompt and ask AI, what's the problem in this equipment? AI give you the answer probably 2 years before me. I mean, a
Right.
little bit of a joke, but those are the impact I start to see in my work, like AI telling us how to identify a problem. We were explained not long ago a scenario where, for instance, we do sometimes complex system in a gas turbine or
Right.
like a substation, all those things they have control and monitoring and so on. God knows the quantity of alarm and data that we have to process to be able to make sure that it is still secure. The AI
Right.
machine behind give you all those prompts, that visibility like in front of you right there, right? And of
Right.
course, the rest is like the training. How do we do our day-to-day life? I could actually make a report be written by AI, but those are the small impact. But the real impact is on the technical side. AI
Right.
can be really a game changer, all the way to probably even taking down some engineering job.
And I think people need to look at it different, right? I look at it as a tool to actually augment our
Yeah.
possibilities, right? Because what could take us maybe 10, 15 years, we can just narrow it down to maybe 2 or even a couple of months and focus on what matters, right? And I think that one of the things that maybe that AI cannot replace, because last week I was just playing around and I asked ChatGPT, do you have emotion, right? So ChatGPT responded that I don't have emotions, but I'm able to analyze people emotions and things like that. So that critical thinking still will belong to humanity, right? But some of the complex tasks can be broken down with AI and leveraged to actually be more efficient on our day-to-day
I
tasks.
totally agree with you, with this exception, and I see that in my life as an electrical engineer. As an electrical engineer, everything that I have to design for the
Right.
worst case scenario, right?
Okay.
What you say is absolutely true, except that there will be always one outlier that will use that powerfulness of AI for the opposite job. I can give you this user case that we were taught to, right? Let's say somebody make an AI machine and just ask the AI to not follow the command of the operator,
Okay.
or ask the AI to take over the control. People are
Okay.
doing those kind of user case, and it is very real.
Okay.
Sometimes the answer, especially for the computer science people or our DT type of team, is like, yes, you disconnect. But there are some user case that has been developed to teach AI how to not let himself kill. If the action that is being pushed is for you to stop acting, refuse. You just can I mean, and this is year minus 10 from AI, because I can imagine AI
Right.
being probably 100 times more powerful in 10 years than what it is now. Just
Absolutely.
imagine what it can. So I'm always worried about AI or at a certain powerfulness being on the hand of the wrong people, in the wrong hands, so to
Right.
speak, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we could not move forward. At least I kind of give the analogy my own world, assuming what is the worst case scenario is trying, for instance, to operate the grid as it's supposed to be, and AI completely
Right.
refuse. What do we do,
Right.
right? So it must have been, and I don't want to suggest like to stop innovation or whatnot. Yes, it has to go, but I think very early on, we start to almost think like the governance of AI. Because unlike the other
Absolutely.
technology that we have developed, this is the very first time that we are putting a technology that can handle itself naturally. So AI is not
Right.
a human being, but it is probably the most autonomous technology that human being have ever created. Every other system we can plug it, unplug them, and job done. AI is
Right.
different. AI learn by itself and can go rogue. And there are some,
Right.
I think I know many universities in the US or some kind of entity that are working on that. And I think we are lacking the perspective of what will be the governance, who can make it stop.
Right. Right.
And we'll see. Maybe in a couple of years, people will probably think that, yeah, well, this was, don't think it as like a sort of a horror movie. But it's just like the development of AI is going very, very fast. I don't want to say too fast because I don't want to suggest we need to block innovation, but we have to accept that it's going very fast. And we need to
Right.
prepare the
Absolutely.
governance accordingly, because if we lose control, this is the very first time where human being will be completely dominated by the technology it puts forward.
Yeah, it's great, great analogy. And at the bank that I currently work, at, we still having not, we have not accepted the use of AI, right? We have very, very strong governance about AI. Although everybody is just screaming out loud, let us use it, let us use it, let us use it. But we have strong governance. We don't want to, there is nothing that you're going to turn on that's working currently at the bank that
Yeah.
leveraging AI.
Mhm.
But it's gonna be hard because we're still dealing with third parties that we're
Yeah.
interacting, and those third parties are
Yeah.
leveraging AI.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very, very
Yep.
challenging. So finally, beyond engineering, so we're just gonna break away a little bit from the
Mhm.
technicality and just ask you, just beyond engineering, what inspires you personally to keep and keeps you grounded?
Well, I have very basic. I mean, you know me, and we did not exchange for a while, but I did not change. So I'm a very, I would say, almost boring person. I have very, I would say, little needs and so on. So I just want to remain, I want to call it normal, meaning I love my family. I want to get in contact with people surrounding me. I, I don't like drama. For instance, I don't have, yeah, I have big dream or what we can call it as a technology, but I don't wake up every morning thinking that I can change the world or I have to change the world. You know, I don't have those
Right,
kind of level of mission, which helped me grounded.
right,
And I commend everybody who has it. It's just not me,
right,
but I'm very
right,
dedicated to my work. I love working. I love being an electrical engineer. So I love that area. And the rest is, I travel and I can travel, but I always want to keep my life very simple. I'm not dreaming to go explore the space, believe it or not. I love, going national park, watching a soccer game like football. I love the NBA. I
right,
watch the playoffs. Very natural things. I refuse honestly myself to think that I am in a mission in the world to do something amazing or whatnot. If something amazing will have to happen, it will just happen because I was
right,
there or I was one doing it. But
right,
I'm not like settling somewhere and say, what can I do to be known or to be amazing or to, you know what I mean? I'm a very boring
right.
person. So I go to work and I go back home, sort of.
So I remember asking my brother, because my brother is a very brilliant guy, very successful career he has, and I was telling him, why don't you go back to Senegal and do something major? And he had one simple answer for me. He's like, I'm not a hero,
Yes.
and that was the
I love
last.
that. I love that quote. And I probably will steal it from him. Yes, I am not a hero. I don't want to feel myself. If I'm a hero one day, people will say you are a hero, but I'm not campaigning to be a hero. I'm not going after the next
Right,
big thing.
right. Totally understand. So, I do you read? Are you a ebook reader or do you read hardcover
Honestly, I
books?
used, and maybe this might be a little bit shameful. I used to be a reader. I used to be,
Right,
always trying to read, one or two book a year. I mean, in addition to what we're doing. But honestly, most of
right.
these days, my reading are like papers, because as a researcher and so on, I
Okay,
write paper, write proposal, review papers, review proposal. It doesn't count as reading, but the time people have to read is the time I put in reading a paper, technical paper, and so on, try to understand the concept and so on. So, short answer, I'm not reading by the definition of reader today, but I feel I
right.
spend probably the majority of my life in reading stuff, so to speak.
Right. Absolutely. I totally get it. So now, just if you could give one advice to your younger self, what advice would you give? Because we are on the top of the
Hmm.
hour and we like to keep the interview to an
Yeah.
hour. So if you could give advice to a younger version of yourself, what would that advice be?
Yeah, well, again, I will tell probably to myself, as I said in the middle of a conversation, believe in hard work because to be honest, it served me more often than needed. Right?
Right.
Sometimes you work hard and the payoff is not necessarily after you finish the job, but you do things, you do them seriously, you do them, with sincerity and so on. It pay off one way or another. I honestly believe, and hard
Right.
work doesn't mean for me like 20 hours of working, but it's like honest
Right.
work, and the rest is try to have some core value especially in the professional life. In general, I try to be loyal to my organization wherever I work, whether it was the university and in Canada, I did work 5 years, as a consulting engineer before I joined even here. I always make sure that I maintain a sort of clean professional relationship, because that is to me your almost guaranteed to growth in the professional field, right? And the rest is I value very much our Senegalese roots. Doesn't mean, of course, every people in Senegal is a good person or not. Of course not. But as a society, I think we have a great people overall, and I am satisfied. It's not like there is nothing to improve, but I am satisfied. I'm proud to be Senegalese by the value of Senegalese. Like, I'm Senegalese, raised Muslim Senegalese with the value of Muslim Senegalese and so on. And I believe in those by all means. So it helped me grounded. But, my young self will be what you have done, double down and just work even harder. So then you kind of get to, much greater education. So then it serves you for the rest of your professional career.
Great, Ibrahim. I mean, I was looking forward to this conversation. We didn't have time to catch up. Obviously, everybody have their busy life, trying to take care of family. Pursue their career, do so many different things. But I thank you so much for sharing your journey, your wisdom.
Yeah, wisdom is
Remember,
you make me feel great. Honestly, I'm very thankful and honestly honored, because you could technically pick anybody. I mean, the way you feel that maybe I could say something relevant for your podcast is to me an honor and a privilege. And on top of that, I'm very glad to be reconnected. Hope to
absolutely,
see you, in one of these highways or in Montreal or in New York at some point.
absolutely.
But wish you very, very, very much success in this journey, because I think you're doing a very good thing to be, putting on the table something very rational. What is life? How do you
Right,
make success? How do you define success? What have you done that can
right,
serve the next generation? Right? That's my understanding of what you're
absolutely,
trying to do, and it is very
absolutely.
noble from your side to think that you can bring your contribution in that way. In the regard of you becoming the next guru in cybersecurity, please go for it. I mean, I know life happen,
Absolutely.
you have some other challenge, but if you really think that you still don't have an appetite to go bigger, I mean, bigger means intellectually bigger and being recognized in that,
Right,
go for it. And it happens that Canada at least is a great place for that, because there are some mechanism. Tuition fees is not as crazy as in here, and there is a lot of opportunity around doing a PhD almost like a part-time, and you don't need to finish it sooner. So in summary, thank you very much for thinking of me as one of your guests, and wish you all the best for maybe your next opportunity here.
thank you so much, brother. So, to our audience, if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any episode of this Opportunity Room. This is Amadou Cole, your host, and until next time, and I'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, man, the ground.